1,200 kilometers.
Exactly.
In the western of our
yes.
National security. Yes. Yes, indeed, Libya was one of the very important files that we will be tackling in particular. But let me here also take the issue of Syria and Iraq, because these were also part of the issue. But before I go into Syria and Iraq, before this delegation come to Egypt, we've seen some of the Turkish parliamentary pressures existing and speaking about why relations between Turkey and Egypt are heading to a deadlock like that. What are the reasons for that? There were also statements from the defense minister, their defense minister, I'm speaking, the foreign ministry, even the vice or the advisor to the president. How were these preparations in order to see that rapprochement come into intact, or it would really happen?
Well, it started by the defense minister Akar, the Turkish defense minister, who started saying that we respect Egypt's military and we respect the Egyptian presence in the Mediterranean, and he started changing the tone that we do wish to have rapprochement with the Egyptian Military Institute. But that's not the case. I think that our case, it's again about the mercenaries in Libya and about the presence of some Turkish experts there. Until this hour, they're present in Libya. We don't have any of our experts in Libya. We respect the sovereignty of Libya. Why they have their own people there? This is a question mark. And then Mr. Dawood Oglu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think, he said at a certain time, I wish to meet Egypt's foreign minister. Well, the statements are very good. Why not? But on the ground, this is the question. Talking is something, and on the ground is something else. The difference between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and several leaders in this region is that he is a man who has his word. He gives his word. When we said we will fight terrorism, we fought terrorism. We would not intervene in other countries' affairs. We never did it. When we said we will fight illegal immigration, we did it. When we said we are open to all kind of cooperation with everyone, we did it. For instance, we signed the Accords of the Gas Club between Egypt, Lebanon, Israel,
Greece,
Cyprus. And we invited the Turks. They refused. Why? Are we going now to backtrack from our accords with these partners? No. According to international law and Egypt's diplomacy, we will respect all that. So this is an offer made to Ankara. Why do you refuse to join us?
Actually, that is a file in itself that we are going to tackle here. But returning back in the files in Syria and Iraq.
Yes.
Syria and Iraq, some of the also assistance given by Turkey to some parties. How do you view the importance of a real good gesture? And I'm speaking about not just in words, but in deeds. As we heard here, Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri in his statements delivered to the Egyptian parliament, when he said official statements are not enough and they should be supported by actions. And I can also say that actions are the only way to restore relations with Turkey to their normal positions.
Excellent.
When we are speaking here about actions, and we are seeing the Syrian and Iraqi files, what are the actions that are needed here?
Well, it's ABC international law. Retreat from the Arab land. Idlib is an Arab land. It's in Syria's sovereignty. the Turkish forces should just leave. It's very, very simple. Why they're present there? They even impose their lira, their currency there.
Currency. Mm.
I don't understand. Well, they used to say, well, we're fighting the Kurds because they are trying to infiltrate our borders. Well, I think now there is a Russian and American presence. I think that the Kurds now have the regional autonomy, and I think that the case is very, very strict now. They cannot just cross the borders and invade Turkey as they allege. So this is the first step. The second step, Syria is fighting terrorist groups. Why these terrorist groups are getting finance and arms from Turkey? This is one of the questions that we are asking. There is some, for example, let me give you an example. When there was one of the Russian airplanes that was shot down, and the pilot over Syria, and the pilot was captured. He was killed by a group called the Grey Wolves. These are not Syrians, these are not Iraqis. The Grey Wolves are nationalist Turkish movement. What they were doing inside Syria when they captured this pilot and they killed him. So why these groups are in Syria's land?
Violation to the sovereignty of the territory of the Syrian territories.
Or the Ottoman dream? Because the same thing is happening in Iraq. Let's move to Iraq. They say the Turkmen ethnicity. Well, the ethnic Turkmen, they are under the flag of Iraq. If they want to live under the sovereignty of Iraq, they are welcome. But that does not mean that they will call Turkey to have a military base there. That's not, there is no explanation for that. So, and many countries have different ethnicity, but at the end there is one government and one flag. So and there is a huge file that I think Egypt opened it with the Turks, is the Euphrates, because they're constructing dams now, hurting the waters in the Euphrates in Iraq and in Syria. Why playing the card of the water? We all know this.
Waters of the Euphrates, yes.
Yes.
Has been lessened almost.
Yes.
Droughts started in Syria.
And it's not natural event. It's man-made.
Yes, it's man-made. It's
Yes.
because of the dams, the
Yes.
Turkish dams.
And why they are creating these problems, why they are trying to infect this population. We all know that Iraq is dependent also not only on oil but in agriculture. Why you're hurting the people there? So these are Arab files and harming everyone. So I think that in Syria, the retreat and the finance of these groups should stop. The retreat of the forces and the finance of these groups should stop. We know that there will be elections in Syria, and as our foreign ministry said it before, and President Sisi said it before, it's for the Syrian people to decide their fate. Not other countries will decide it for them. They will have elections under the supervision of the international, of the Russians and the Americans, everyone. So why exerting all these pressures inside Syria's affairs? This is a sovereign country. And the same thing in Iraq. When they say, well, we decided to create a military base because it will protect us from the Kurds, it was normal that the Prime Minister of Iraq called the ambassador of Turkey and said, explain to me why you're creating a military base inside, and they don't respect the fly zones.
Why are we creating a military base inside my lands without my approval?
Exactly.
In the first place.
Exactly. Without our approval. There is no alliance between both countries.
No, it's not about alliance. It's even alliances take the permission of each other in order
Yes.
to make bases in their own lands, right?
So,
Right. Before we continue on with our discussion, let's see another report on Egypt's efforts to resolve the Libyan crisis. And Libya has been one of the main files that were put in the forefront of the discussions between the Egyptian and the Turkish delegation. Let's watch.
Egypt's intensive efforts in Libya have helped resolve the Libyan conflict, as Egypt had intensified its negotiations with all Libyan parties. To counter the movement of external parties, it had also aided in negotiations to find a solution between the Libyan factions, as well as build a unified and stable country. In his speech to Egypt's House of Representatives in the beginning of the current year, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry stated that Egyptian efforts represented a turning point in the course of the Libyan crisis. It was an explicit call to adhere to a political solution for the crisis and stop operations and military escalation. This was confirmed by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi during his speech at the Sidi Barani military base in western Egypt. During the speech, President el-Sisi highlighted Egypt's view that the Sirt Jufra area represents a red line for Egypt and its national security. This matter was followed by an intensification of Egypt's contact and meetings with all relevant regional and international parties. Egypt's target has always been to reach a comprehensive settlement of the Libyan crisis, whilst addressing all forms of external interference. It's worth mentioning that Egypt intensified its efforts to preserve Libyan security and capabilities, and to stop foreign interference in the Libyan affairs, so that the country does not become a haven for terrorist organizations and put pressure on Egyptian security. Egypt is closely monitoring the situation in Libya and supports all efforts aimed at stability, security, and the preservation of Libyan institutions. In addition to its support to Libya, Egypt has strong presence across the Middle East, whether in Syria, Yemen, or Iraq, as well as the Gulf.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, Dr. Cherif. And we were speaking about Turkey. Now we are supposed to be shifting towards another issue, which is one of the big files that Egypt tackled during the discussions, the Libyan file. And we've seen lots of developments in Libya, particularly in the past period. Egypt has been one of the countries in the forefront of exerting its utmost effort in order to be able to help the Libyan people reach such consensus and reach what they are in today. How do you view the Egyptian efforts in that? How do you view how Egypt has helped the Libyan people reach that? And how do you view the next stage?
Well, since the beginning of the crisis in Libya, Egypt has done a lot for Libya. For instance, after the era of Colonel Gaddafi, Libya had no spokesman and there was chaos everywhere. We introduced Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar to the West because even in France they refused to meet him, and Egypt's diplomacy presented Marshal Khalifa Haftar as the representative of the people of Libya in fighting terrorism and bringing order back. And we managed to make him someone representative of the people. Then we had the government of Sarraj, and unfortunately it was working with Qatar and Turkey against Libya's interests. But Egypt had a very, very studied, let's say, diplomacy. We said we would not like to lose this faction of the Libyan people because still they are Libyans. And at the end, Mr. Sarraj, after many years, came to Cairo and met President Sisi, and then he left the office. And then we went to the third stage, and all these are success of Egypt and President Sisi policy, because it was very clear that some foreign forces wanted us to militarily intervene, and we didn't do it. And then there was Mr. Dabeba, the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister. He was present in Egypt in the first day of his
Please go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
The first day in office, he came to Cairo because he understood that it's Egypt who will help him restore order and unity. And he asked the advice of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Although some commentators said Mr. Dabeiba has some political affiliations against Egypt's interests, we didn't want to look at that. We said if he's willing to talk for the sake of Libya's interest, why not? And he came to Egypt and we started these negotiations. And then Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli went with a high-level delegation to Tripoli and to Libya, and we started negotiating the investment and rebuilding the infrastructure. So, as you see, we had a very, very different kind of policy in this case, because any country like Egypt, in Egypt's situation, would have militarily settled this, the issue. We didn't resort to that. We always said, these are the affairs of Libya and the Libyan people. We would help them. We will let them reach the unity. And we did it. And the result is excellent now, because the Libyan people, they know who violated their sovereignty and who respected their sovereignty. And they know that Egypt was there for them, respected the sovereignty, and helped them.
Here we have to take the Libyan file from different aspects. One is that Libya is our neighbor, and that it is part of the African continent, and it has lots of resources. Plus, it is our depth of our Western national security. Almost a year ago, President Sisi stated that Egypt would not allow its national security to be jeopardized as a result of the developments in Libya. And hence, he started the process of helping the Libyan find their consensus. And at the same time, there was Egypt and there was Turkey. And there were a kind of it was not just Egypt, of course. It was some of the Arab countries who thought that Libya should be settled and should rise again to its responsibility. And there was the interference of Turkey. Here, when we speak about Libya, we're speaking about our neighbors. But when we speak about Turkey and Libya, what are we speaking about here?
Ottoman Empire?
Ottoman, it doesn't have to do with this part.
I have no other thing to say.
No, but they are not part of the of their thoughts for the Ottoman Empire.
This is the only thing that we can...
Gas. If we speak about the gas issue, and we have to turn to this file, because this file is very important. The gas issue is the
ticking bomb, let's say.
The ticking bomb, definitely, but also the sight or the foresight of everyone.
Of course.
Right. So if we speak about the gas issue, and we speak about, definitely, as you said, respectively here, that Egypt went into the gas club with the countries, Greece, Cyprus, Lebanon, Israel and Egypt, of course. How do you view how such rapprochement between Egypt and Turkey at this upcoming stage would reflect on that club, and how would the issue of gas be tackled in this upcoming stage?
It will be very critical, because I think that the Turks are smart in this movement, let's say. They think that it is a way to create a fracture in this club. For instance, if they will have any problems, and they already have problems with Greece and Cyprus concerning this issue. And mainly the problem between Egypt and Turkey was the existence of the fleets, the Turkish fleets in this zone, trying to jeopardize Cyprus' security and the eastern part of the Mediterranean. And I think that Turkey, one of the things that have pushed Ankara to take this rapprochement is the the alliance, the military and economic alliance and the diplomatic alliance between the three countries, Egypt, Cyprus and Greece. So I think that they are trying, maybe, because I have this question, why they refrain from joining this club? Why they do not wish to accept the international law in this part of the Mediterranean?
Maybe because they cannot drill until the year 2023?
Well, I think that all the countries now in this club, they understood now that it's better to work on clear water, as we say, and work according to international accords than waiting for 2023 or something else. I think that sooner is better. I think the solution is very clear, that you join this club, you start talking with everyone, and you accept the borders, the maritime borders. So I don't think that the Turks are willing to accept this alliance or this accord, regional accord, easily. So they think that if they create some relations, bilateral relations, let's call it like that, between Egypt and Turkey, for instance, at a certain time, maybe Egypt will loosen its positions supporting Greece or Cyprus on some issues. I don't think that diplomacy and Egypt diplomacy goes like that. We are ready to hear everyone, but we would not forsake international law, we would not forsake our allies, we would not forsake our national interest, and we are inviting them to join us.
If I may speak about, because you brought the issue of the Egyptian diplomacy and the Egyptian policy, and there has been always, or our diplomacy has acted always with integrity and so clear-cut policies. How do you view Egypt's policy in acting with world issues, with Arab issues, with African issues, and with allies and even with enemies?
Well, it has changed through the years, but I think one of the main characteristics of Egypt's diplomacy since the 1970s till now is the vision. And I think that we are lucky enough to have someone like President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who has a vision on the long term. We know that when we create alliances, when and where it will help us. And we know if we give a word, and Egypt's diplomacy is about that, when we give a clear word to a friend or even a foe, that we will act such and such a way, we stick to the word we gave. We have all the possibilities to distract anyone and use the words to maneuver, but this is not Egypt's diplomacy. So with our friends, let me give you an example. The illegal immigration, for example, in the Mediterranean. When President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi came to the office, the relations with the EU wasn't that good, because we all know that at the Obama administration things were messy and not clear. He made visits to every European capital, and we started talking especially with the Italians, who suffered a lot from the illegal immigrations, and we started giving them our word that we will never use this card as a blackmail like Turkish do. We will never use it. We will fight with you in the same camp against this traffic or this illegal
trafficking of
yes. And we did it. So everyone saw that Egypt diplomacy was honest and has an integrity. And then when we told them, we do not wish that you intervene in our internal affairs under the headline of human rights and all that, they respected Egypt at that time. because they saw that we are powerful on the outside. They can count on us on the outside. Egypt is a strong country in diplomacy, not only in the military, and you have to respect it in the internal affairs. So we achieved this with our enemies. There is two sides. There is those who are working for some of our enemies. For example, when we had the problem with the Sarraj government, and others who are dealing face-to-face with us, like in Turkey or Hamas or some others.
Yes.
I think that Egypt was very clear, as you said. We said it to all of them. Egypt has its national security as a red line. And in the Middle East, the national security has always something to do with the regional affairs. Our national security, for example, let's say clearly, started from Sirte and Jafra.
Yes.
So I think that we have the strongest diplomacy in this region, and we are lucky to have it. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is guiding us on the right track on this.
Yes, very much indeed. Remains to be seen how the future of the Egyptian-Turkish relations would be depending on deeds and actions, not only words and promises. Dr. Cherif Amir, Professor of International Relations, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Tomorrow will be another episode with another colleague. Until tomorrow, it's good night.